Welcome to Heart Space, a sanctuary where holistic intuitive service is honored and the heart leads the way. Here, we open space for guidance and deep restoration for both heart and soul. I'm Eve Alexander Ruiz, a doctor who, after psychiatry training, left traditional medicine to more wholly use wisdom of the heart, helping visionary entrepreneurs who've experienced manipulation to realign with purpose and create lives of deep personal and professional fulfillment. And as your host here, I am so thrilled to introduce you to the sweetheart of Heart Space herself, Janet Whitener. For decades, Janet has walked in communion with spirit. She is a gifted, intuitive, a gentle yet powerful energy healer, and a clear, grounded channel. Her presence invites truth, her work restores clarity, and her wisdom uplifts the soul. Thank you so much, Janet, for coming and joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, you're so welcome. My first question to you is, would you please share with us how you were inspired to work with spirit to help others?
Oh, yes, um, it began as a personal healing for me. Um, I had always had a connection to spirit as a child. They were my invisible friends. But when I was about 5, 6 years old, they upset my mother because I would know things I shouldn't know. Who was coming to the door? Who was going to call on the phone? What was in that box that I wasn't supposed to unwrap yet? All those things.
Oh, yeah.
And she made it really clear to me that I needed to make them go away and stop listening to them. And so
Mhm.
I was, they were such a comfort to me. They were my playmates, they were my friends, but I couldn't conflict with mom. And so I made them go away. And I have to say that it was a challenge. I became very lonely as a child and taught myself to read at about that same time because one of the gifts from Spirit was all these wonderful stories. And I didn't realize until much later how much that reading would play into the work I do now. But
Oh,
when I was 19, I was rear-ended by a drunk driver and was my neck was broken. I died in the ambulance on the way
holy
to the hospital
moly. Oh, okay. So you broke your neck and you died at 19.
at 19. Yeah.
Oh
I
my gosh.
never heard of anything called a near-death experience and didn't hear that term until it was probably in my 40s. But my experience on the other side was, I got to see the bright light, but I didn't get to see all the loved ones on the other side. I think they put me basically in a waiting room. But the waiting
Mm.
room to me looked like a park bench looking out over this beautiful meadow. And I have to admit, it was the most peaceful I could ever remember feeling.
Oh,
I was just,
wow.
yeah, it was just beautiful.
Thank you
And
so
not just,
much for sharing this with all of your listeners, many of whom have likely not had a near death experience. I especially love that you mentioned you saw the light.
it, but that should be a bumper sticker, right?
That's right.
But I, even though it's been decades, I can't forget a single moment of the experience. And while I was there on the park bench looking out over all this beautiful nature, someone came
Mm.
up behind me, put their hands on my shoulders. And I often say, if I had one regret, it's that I was so completely peaceful, I never turned to look at them.
Oh,
I knew who they were and I knew they loved me, but there's still that, I wish I had thought to. But what they
oh.
said to me was, um, of course, this is your home. Of course, you can stay. But, and always be cautious when spirit says to you, but.
All right then.
And they reminded me why I chose the life. And that was to consciously work with the energies of trust and truth. And even as they said that, I thought, I don't think I've experienced any of that. And about that time, I fell back into the body and they came back with me.
Wow. Wow. So let's fast forward to the first time that you decided to help people with this beautiful
It took,
experience.
thank you. It took years for my personal healing to get me to a place where I felt peaceful and balanced and had some connection to my purpose in the life. And at that point, I asked them, I said, I know you came to work with me, but I'm so changed and I'm so much happier and feel for the first time like I have ownership of my own life. I said, can you do the same thing for other people? Because I wanted other people to feel what I felt like instead of being so afraid and so much different types of pain that by finding a way to reclaim ownership, you you make completely different choices that don't that let you let go of fear, let go of pain. And they they hadn't expected that. It's always fun when you can surprise spirit. And so we
I'm
talked about
sure it is.
it is, yeah. We don't have that. We play a game. I love the ones I work with. They have such a sense of humor, and we do puns and words back and forth. They have about 99 points, and I have maybe two, but I don't give up trying. Yeah, they're
Good for you. Now, I noticed one of the things that you do is channeling. Would you please define this for us?
yes. A lot of people don't understand it, and they think somehow that spirit comes inside and possesses you. I actually had someone that say that to me, "Are you being possessed?" No, no, no. It's very much a loving embrace, is my understanding of channeling. They come, we have a human energy field. Some people call it the aura, and they have an energy field. And channeling is when their energy field overlaps my energy field. And for me, it feels like they come up behind me and kind of wrap their arms around me. They don't ever
Hmm.
actually touch my body or come into the body, but I give them permission to use my consciousness, my words, my what I know, like, don't chew with your mouth open, social mores, and there's a lot of funny stories around that.
I'm
Uh,
sure.
but this is when I began to understand how important all the reading I had done when I was younger, because it gave them a vocabulary, it gave them an understanding of language. Spirit has no language. And so for them to work with a physical channel, they have to come to an understanding of language. And that's a process for both the channel and for the spirit.
I especially
So
love the way, and I'm so thankful that you explained it so clearly. First of all, thank you very much for that. I love that the times that I have been able to sit in an audience and experience your channeling in a group, knowing now how you're feeling, what your sensations are as you're doing it. And I must say that the ease with which you hold your body and the peacefulness in your visage match exactly the explanation you gave for it.
I
So
think
I love
so.
that. You're just piecing together the pieces of the puzzle for me.
Well, it's an ongoing journey. My job as a channel is to be a clear conduit. I have to put my stuff aside, my anything emotional, anything that I'm preoccupied with, any physical distractions. I have to have the commitment and discipline to set those aside so that they have clear space to work. And that's what I teach my students. And but
That
it
is
is
beautiful.
thank
And
you.
what kind of messages come through when you channel? Is it
Um,
anything or is there a certain kind of theme?
You know, their focus, if I had to say what their focus is, I believe that it's really about helping people, first of all, under the umbrella of helping people realize that we do create our reality and learn to take responsibility for that. And a lot of it rests within our emotional body, where we have a lot of unprocessed, unreleased emotions from
Hmm.
childhood, from adolescence, from early adulthood, from traumatic events. And everything that isn't released starts to block us in terms of allowing us free choice and free will. We're
Yes.
becoming predetermined by our past. which takes our freedom from us. And it makes it so much easier for other people, for us to give responsibility over to other people. So the process is helping people rediscover that sense of self and ownership and understand their rights and responsibilities as a human being from a spirit's perspective. But yeah, amazing things come through. Sometimes I think even in the briefest of interactions, a story that's very powerful example and very near and dear to my heart. I had a man that came in, I'd never met him, didn't know anything about him, sat down across from me and didn't even speak, didn't ask a question, nothing. And I'm like, okay, you're waiting for a message from spirit.
Mhm.
And I got an image of a woman in a
Mhm.
gown, and she was in the corner of a room, faced into a corner. And she was exhausted and just worn out, and she couldn't go forward and she couldn't go back. And all she kept saying was, thank you. And when I shared that image with him, this great big guy, I mean, he must have been 6'4" and it was like, 250 pounds of muscle, just
Mhm.
started to cry. And I'm like,
Mhm.
could you help me understand your emotional response? And he told me that his sister had a brain injury and he was her executor and he had to be the one to pull the plug.
Oh my goodness. Wow. No, that is the last thing someone would ever expect to hear. Oh my
And
goodness.
And so that's what Spirit's about. In those few, that was a 15-minute reading. Not that I can always do that in 15 minutes, but it was an example of
Hmm.
how Spirit really wants us to be reassured that love doesn't die. It changes, but it doesn't die.
Yeah.
And the comfort from that message, I think, brought him so much relief.
Oh, I can only imagine. Wow. So, who would you describe as the type of person who might benefit most then from what you do for people?
I think anyone that comes with an open mind that they might find a way to look at their life and their choices and their circumstances in a new way, different perspective. My job isn't to convince or prove. My job is simply offer suggestions and alternatives and help people see that they could look at it in a new way.
I love that. So, for everyone listening here, take note because as you can see, Janet pulls messages pretty powerfully through. Well, I'm wondering, is there any kind of message of encouragement that you want to share with your listeners during these challenging times?
Oh, so many. But I think the most concise way that Spirit puts it is be aware of what you're feeding. In other words, our energy belongs to us, but we can give it into the world in different ways. And right now, there's so many opportunities to invest in fear. And is that really what you want to feed? Rather to feed trust, feed truth, feed your belief in your faith in God, that we are beloved of our Creator and that they wish for us health, happiness, abundance, all the things we want for ourselves. And that I think the hardest message for people to hear is that God has no judgment of us, truly gifted us with free will, and that judgment is a human perspective that we like to assign to God so that we can avoid responsibility.
Well put. My goodness. Well, now switching over from the compassionate and spiritual side of channeling, going to another side, has there been any research that validates what you are doing?
You know, and I kept the words here so I can read them appropriately. In 2016, I was invited to be a guest by a presenter at the Psychological Association, Parapsychological Association, and Society for Scientific Exploration. And it was a game changer for me because up to that point, I'd always tried to figure out how to explain to people what I did, how I did it, versus just doing it. And what I came to understand in those few days while I was in Colorado with this event was that other people are investing their whole lives in explaining it. All I have to do is do my job, be a channel. So for me, it was so freeing that other people are doing that part of it. I'll do my best to answer questions for people, but my joy, my passion is in being the channel.
Oh, I love hearing that. And I'm sure they love your being their channel. Would you describe who you're channeling?
Um, yes, typically I channel Arrow, and their name is spelled Aero. They call themselves my gatekeeper. And what they mean by that is any entity, any spirit that wants to channel through me, they have to basically meet the vibrational requirements that Arrow sets, which is they must vibrate with unconditional love. And so I have the ability to channel a variety of entities as long as they line up with that requirement. Yeah. So one of the gifts I have that I didn't even realize until I started teaching classes on working with spirit is that I am able to hear and receive messages and on occasion channel the higher selves of other people, which is so profoundly healing for them to know the unconditional love their higher selves hold for them and to get the very specific messages coming from those higher selves.
I can only imagine. Well,
They chose their because spirit doesn't typically have names because they don't have a need for them. But for my comfort, they chose a name, and I love the background of what they chose.
absolutely. Okay. Now, Janet, you've mentioned to me that you do a few other things besides channeling. Would you like to go a little into those?
Yes, I do work as a medium. It's different than channeling. From my perspective, there's those on the other side of the veil that act like non-physical mediums, and then there's people like me that are able to hear them, and we kind of meet and bring the physical person seeking the information and the non-physical person on the other side together so that they can hear and sense each other. So many beautiful messages, so much healing. I have a passion for it because it's so profound in the moment and so many amazing stories. Years ago, if there's room for me to tell a story, years ago I was new to being a medium. And I was still a little uncertain about it. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do my best. And this woman came in for a reading and I could feel the sorrow. And I told her I feel sorrow and I'm not sure where it's coming from. And about that time I said, wait, I said, something's happening here. And into the room, energetically, not in real life, was a Great Dane, a black and white spotted Great Dane. And he was belly crawling into the room and looking at her like, is it okay for me to be here? And as I described that to her, she just lost it. She was here for the reading because her dog had just died. That was her.
Oh, oh my.
And when he misbehaved, he would belly crawl into the room and lay at her feet until she told him it was okay.
Oh my goodness.
And so the fact that me, a perfect stranger who'd never met her, didn't know anything about her, gave her that image and she walked out of there a changed person. And
I'm sure she did.
that cemented it for me that I would risk because working as a medium, I feel a lot more visible, I guess is a way to put it, than I do when I work as a channel. And
Mhm.
so for me, it felt much more vulnerable. And so my experience, we're changed, right? I am changed by my work just
Mhm.
as other people are. And that was just a moment that really brought home to me that, you know, working with spirit, they never correct you. They never say, hey, you could have done this better or you did this poorly. They never do that. And what I realized is that my ego had gotten in the way, my fear of making a mistake, my concern about doing something wrong that might hurt another person. And so in that experience, I learned to ask myself what's more important, my fear or the message that might really help this other person. And so it became so easy for me to say, I choose. And that's when I started every session with, I do a invocation, usually silently, but that invocation is, I am choosing to be of service in this moment. I release all concerns to unconditional love.
You have shared the golden words. Whenever a lot of us in our vocations have any doubts and might feel a little afraid or hesitant to get deep into our work for that moment, the most important thing that seems to rise us up from wherever we are is to look into the eyes of the person who needs our services. And then in sensing, feeling, blending energy with them, we are moved to act. Thank you for defining such an important act to do. This is why we do this, right? We are light workers because we want that light to move others in the direction that is for their highest good. You have expressed so much wisdom here. I have been entranced by your stories, and I want to thank you for sharing them with everyone who is listening. I am so honored to have been able to have you here with me. And I want to mention to the audience, for any of you who would love to have an experience with Janet, you may look at the Heart Space website, which is down below, for dates and times of availability. We also have a hotline, and that information as well is on the website. I am looking forward to when I see you next at Heart Space, Janet. And in the meantime, I just want to say to everyone else, see you next time. Namaste.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.